I've seen many compare this camera to ARRI. I've seen many compare it to Red. But I think the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K is definitely in a league of its own, especially at this price point. But before we talk about the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K full frame, I think we need to take a little bit of a look at what you can produce with this camera. This video is brought to you by ARRI, one of the best sources for background music for your videos, sound effects, editing and graphics templates, and stock footage. So if you're looking for an amazing platform that you can go to, use the link in the description down below and you will get 2 months off your very first purchase of ARRI Max. Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K is honestly one of the best camera releases over the last year. A familiar body with a familiar layout, but what matters the most is the power that this camera puts into your hands. For the tech nerds, I'll list out a spec list so you can take this in. The BMCC6K has a full-frame 24x36mm sensor, which shoots a max resolution of 6K open gate at 6048x4032 pixels. It also uses the L mount system, which is a departure from the EF mount system, which we are used to with Blackmagic cameras. This new mount system opens a lot of doors for mounting lenses onto this camera. I would imagine this is definitely a new lens system for many, so whether or not you adapt lenses you already own or decide to buy an L mount lens, the quality will be amazing regardless. The camera also shoots other 6K video options as well as 4K and 1080p along with Super 45 and Super 16 options. However, there is a sizable crop when you go into 4K and 1080p, something I wish Blackmagic changes in the future models of this camera line. Now, being at this price point, it may or may not happen, but I would really love to see something like that happen. The images you get out of camera are beautiful. They're nice and detailed. I love how skin tones are produced from this sensor and things just look so beautiful. Blackmagic has this thing that they call digital film, which this camera produces, and I have to say the look is so gorgeous straight out of camera with barely any color grading work done. Now, speaking of color grading, the files this camera produces are B-RAW files, strictly B-RAW, no ProRes or H.264. This may be a turn off to some, but I really love the workflow with B-RAW files, and you get a lot more control over the final look you want and can really mold the image how you desire. So I'm in love with it. B-RAW for the win. This camera also does record in H.264 in proxies, but that's a default setting which you cannot turn off. And the files are quite small and they're mainly used for editing to make things a little bit easier, whether you're working in DaVinci or Premiere or Final Cut, I would say. But those proxy files, they're really not the highest resolution, so I wouldn't really recommend that you use them as your final thing when producing output to a client. Moving on, the body is very familiar. The form factor of this camera is quite similar to the previous pocket cinema cameras, which is something that is a turn off to many, but to me personally, I have absolutely no issue with it. I love this form factor, and even in the new Pixis camera with this box form factor, I do think that I will definitely also love using that as well, because I'm going to definitely bring it up, and for the style of work that I aim to get done with it, regardless of the form factor, I think to me the image and the workflow that I can set up with both cameras is going to just make things work seamlessly. It's more of a factor of what I am able to create and less of how the camera is shaped, as long as it doesn't get in the way of creating what is envisioned. Now, in terms of video quality, this camera is a total beast. The 6K images coming out of this sensor are so detailed, sharp, punchy, and beautiful. I personally have paired this with a Mikey f1.7 50mm L-mount lens, and just using this very affordable lens, I have been able to capture such amazing images with this camera. I honestly think that this full frame sensor has some type of magic, because I swear the camera itself makes the images look so good with barely any effort. And that I love. You've been seeing samples of what this camera produces, so you can make the judgment on whether or not you like the quality. I will also provide a few links in the comments of this video so you can view a few more videos of mine showcasing the quality of this camera. Also, this camera has an OLPF and no ND filters built in. I've gotten a few questions about this previously, and I wanted to make this clear. There are no built-in ND filters in the camera body, but we do get an optical low pass filter which helps deal with issues such as moire, which can ruin images. Now, moire can be described as a visual effect that happens when two similar patterns overlap, creating new wavy or unwanted stripes of color that go across a photo that wasn't originally there. It can occur in various situations, like photographing subjects with fine repetitive patterns or printing images with intricate designs. The BMCC6KFF deals with that kind of issue. So, moving on. This camera also has 13 stops of dynamic range, which is very good for this price point. Now, low light performance is quite interesting because I did a bit of low light testing with this camera, and the results which came out of it are amazing, which is very interesting, especially with the fact being that I did most of this testing at 100 ISO, and if my aperture set to f4. My shutter angle was around 180 degrees the entire time as well, and the performance out of camera is brilliant. So I don't know again what magic sauce Blackmagic sprinkled into this camera, but it definitely did a great job. I'm interested in doing a lot more testing with low light capabilities of this camera for sure. Now, just a few things I want to run through before I move on to a few things that I don't necessarily like about this camera. We have a CF Express storage slot on this camera, and you can also record to an external SSD. I do welcome the use of CF Express Type B storage. It's a bit more affordable than CFast, and it is also faster in terms of speed. We also do have a recent firmware update 8.1, which makes navigating the files and the menus so amazing. You can see all the files that you've shot, upload straight from camera to Blackmagic Cloud, and delete files in camera, which is just magical. Now, onto the things that I don't necessarily like. First off, the frame rate options. I find this camera to be a tad bit limiting with the frame rate options you get. However, they're still workable. I typically shoot in higher frame rate at 6K open gate around 36 FPS, which is slowed down to 24, which is actually very smooth and better than I imagined. However, I do wish we could have gotten 60 FPS at open gate and 120 at 4K, maybe 240 FPS in 1080p. And also, when you're talking about the Pixel 6K, which is coming out very soon, it does have very similar recording options and very similar frame rate limitations, which it is clearly the 6K full frame rehoused in a new body, and there will definitely be more coming soon with future iterations of this camera. But back to the 6K full frame. I also am not a huge fan of how much the sensor crops in when you are going down in resolution. But most people who get this camera likely aren't going to be using 1080p quality that much unless they're in a pinch or there's something specific that they need to get shot in 120 FPS. If you're looking for a camera with a lot of high frame rate options, this is not your pick. You can look elsewhere. But if you're looking for a camera with high quality video output, you can make this your bet. If you do documentary work, commercial work, and even YouTube, this is a great choice. Now on to rolling shutter, which honestly is not great. That's all I'll say. Nothing too crazy, just your typical rolling shutter. I do feel that people overreact sometimes when it comes to rolling shutter, because most use cases you want to be whipping your camera around from left to right constantly. But yeah, now on to battery life. To me, it's perfectly fine. It's what I would expect from a camera, especially shooting at the quality that you're getting out of this. And just work with extra batteries if you need it. And if you're rigging this camera up, you'll be using a V-mount battery anyway, so it won't really be too big of a deal. But for me, that's my thoughts on this camera. The Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K full frame is a great deal on a camera. Beautiful quality, and though it has its shortcomings, it fits into my personal workflow so very much. And for the quality of the videos that you can create with this camera, it's completely worth it. The quality and workflow for me outweigh any small nitpicks I would have with this system. It works, and it works beautifully. If you're considering picking up one of these, I would definitely recommend that you get one if you think it would fit perfectly into your workflow or intended use cases. But for now, I thank you personally for watching. Hoping to see you in my future videos, comment sections, and hoping to see your thoughts on this one. If you enjoyed, you should subscribe and give this video a big thumbs up, and I will be seeing you in the next video.